Hello, everybody. Welcome to This Week in Indies for May 30th. Ooh. Getting some weird feedbacks from somebody. Anyway, welcome to This Week in Indies, May 30th, 2021, a day before Memorial Day here in the United States. And we've got some really great content for you this week. We're going to be talking about the pros and cons of live events and with the roundtable discussion. And then we have another great indie connection from somebody you might recognize today. But with that being said, we're going to start things off with Mr. JD Estrada, who's going to give us a nice indie music review from somebody you might be familiar with. And if you're not, well, you should be. She's been around a long time and she's not stopping anytime soon. So here's Mr. Estrada, and we'll be right back with the roundtable discussion after that.
Greetings, fellow humans, and welcome to another indie music review. It's been a while since I did one, but I have a treat for you, and I took a while for a couple of reasons. First off, I can't believe I hadn't, reviewed any DeFranco until now. Why? Because she is the godmother of indie. She founded Righteous Babe Records in 1990. This is the hair metal heyday. That stuff. And just before grunge blew up, right around that time. She was doing her thing on her terms. And she's a badass. Fast forward to 2021. 20 albums, 2 additional albums with Utah Phillips, at least 4 live albums, official releases, and Lord knows how many bootlegs. A couple of compilations. And a body of work that is definitely impressive, since she's also either fully produced or co-produced every single album. That's insane, but that's Annie. It's not enough that she has enviable guitar skills, where she shows that folk music and an acoustic guitar can cut through brick and be badass. It's not enough that her lyrics speak profoundly and is a voice all her own. And by the way, she's one of my influences in terms of certain types of poetry that I explore. Lyrically speaking, she is fascinating and fabulous. But she's done it all on her dime and on her terms. And this latest album is absolutely gorgeous. We're currently listening to Revolutionary Love, which is the title track. Just mellow, just beautiful, great instrumentation. And seriously, why did I take so long doing this? Because I listened to her entire discography, front to back, before doing this review. I wanted to have fresh her approach, how she's varied, and with the exception of, I think, Evolve and Educated Guess, every other album is really consistent and really solid. Those two, not bad, just not to her level, if you ask me. And I'm completely sure that it has to do everything with personal taste. Both albums with Utah Phillips are out there, and you're either in it, to enjoy it, or it's not your cup of tea, and I completely get that. But I wanted to hear that evolution, which beyond an artist exploring different things, it's also her turning 50, her becoming a mother. And if you thought any of that would slow her down, boy, are you wrong. Her live performances are, in terms of a singer-songwriter, it is what I would want. In terms of female singer-songwriters, she's on the top of my list of people that I want to see. In terms of male singer-songwriters, I think Colin Hay would be my top guy that I want to see live. If it's not apparent by now, I am a fan of Miss DeFranco. And again, she's one of several influences in my poetry. Once I get through the translation of 2020 to 2020 and 2020 full English and full Spanish, there are two poems in the English side that are very much influenced by her. As you can see, this is a smooth track and it's just nice and it's got a good groove, and it's a type of album to put on and chill to. And the second track is called Background. Put a bit of that. See? It's nice, lo-fi, chill, and more than musical styles, I think Ani DeFranco's body of work, her albums, have lyrical continuity. It's the lyrics that hold more of a theme than the music. The music is cohesive and makes sense in an album setting, but I think that the lyrics really capture where she was at and where she's at with this one. You know, if you're not a Democrat, don't listen to this. If you're not liberal, don't listen to this. If you are open-minded and can accept someone have a different point of view to yours, by all means, listen to this. It's a wonderful album, and wow, it's just so good, just so good. You know, I love her voice, I love her music, I love her guitar style, and if I would have to describe this is her version of doing you a solid, being there for you, offering music to get through whatever we're going through now as a collective, which is, you know, pretty intense times, man. But if you listen to Do or Die, I'm gonna leave you with a little bit of this, but my invitation is for you to watch the video, read the lyrics, take it on board, and see that she co-produced this. It's awesome. And she's like, I wish I could have done better. It's like, you're doing brilliant, Annie. From one fan, seriously, Miss DeFranco, you are something else. And the way you do things, the way you attack lyrics, the way you attack music, or create music, because right now we're at a time of creation, of coming together, not so much attack. I think it's really special. And if you want like an album that is set to the times we're living without being too heavy because of the COVID and the pandemic and the war and everything we're living, check this out. Till next time though, peace, love, and Mikey Roll.
News every day, and right there on Pennsylvania Avenue, the sheetless KKK. And there's models building microphones, chasing maniacs around, and everything on fire. And there's twisters touching down. And I know you got to fight your way just to be a gentleman. And I know I got to fight my blood just to keep hearing ya.
All right, and now we're back with the roundtable discussion, and I've got a great group here with me today. We lost somebody. All right, there we go. All right, so I've got a great group here with me today. I'm real excited to have them to talk a little bit about the pros and cons and the morality aspect of are we moving too quickly, too fast? You know, getting into, is it time? You know, all of the wonderful things that are happening. I mean, all kinds of different festivals are opening up, Comic-Cons, book festivals, writer conferences, all kinds of interesting things. And there's still some things going on online as well. And so we'll talk all about that with this group, who are very simply, well, I'll have introduced themselves right here, right now. So Mr. Josh, start us off.
Real quick, I just want to say something. JD, I finally got it. Can't wait to read it. But first off, I'm Josh Pantalleresco. I write stuff, I podcast, I illustrate, I broadcast. I do a little bit of everything. My current show, Just Joshing, is streams Monday through Friday, 4 of those days a week around 7 p.m. I have an interview a guest, and on the weekends I usually draw. So cool, that's me.
Outstanding. That's my favorite JD poetry collection, by the way.
Yeah.
I love that one. All right, Ryan, why don't you introduce yourself and welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Ryan D. Meier. I'm a fantasy author and storyteller. My 2 books, Shadows of Creation and The Kept King, released in 2020. And I'm excited to be here. Share some thoughts, especially on such a, what's a hot topic and the reality for all of us going forward.
Awesome. Well, we're happy to have you. So thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it. All right, Sarah.
Hi, I'm Sarah, aka the Author Goddess. I write fantasy and a lot of dark fantasy, and oh my gosh, the inspiration this last year.
Nice. Awesome. Welcome. All right. And you might all recognize this face. She's here live with us this week. We love when she does that. So, Courtney, tell everybody about yourself.
Hi, I'm Courtney, and I write under CL Cannon. I am the owner of Fiction Atlas Press, and I actually sometimes find time to write my own books. I write a lot of fantasy and sci-fi, fairy tale retelling, space opera, and then I help a lot of author folks with their marketing stuff, and I do a bunch of stuff in the indie verse. You'll find me on Joe's channel a lot, so excited to be here today.
Awesome. Excited to have you. Thank you for being here. All right. So this is going to be exciting. And yes, Regine says another great panel. I agree. Even before they speak, I agree. So the article I sent everybody had like an interesting take to it, I thought, which was, the consciousness of the idea of this and, how we should feel about all these things happening right now. And I know that certain people are a little stir crazy at the moment, and some are, already getting about and things of that nature. So I'm just kind of curious from everybody's perspective to start with how what you're looking at. I mean, when we talked earlier in the year, and I think a couple of you were on that particular panel that we talked about this, everybody was kind of looking toward the fall, maybe even 2022 to kind of get going again and get out there and about. And so I'm kind of curious if that was your perspective, that's changed at all. Do you feel like there's some momentum behind right now and getting out there, or do you feel like, I'm still sticking to my guns here and going to stay online for a bit longer? Where's everybody's thought process right now?
I'll go first if anyone doesn't mind. Okay, so I mentioned this off the air to Joe. So do I think there's a perfect time to go back? No, there isn't, because no matter what, there is always going to be a risk when we go outside. It doesn't matter when that is, whether it's now, the fall, 2022. It really doesn't matter. The question I think really is about what right now is the most damaging thing. Is it the virus still, or is it the psychological aspects of everything we've done to protect ourselves? And I think for me, like, it's funny because I think conventions are oddly in this weird spot where it's like, more so than, because the live events have been happening since the fall last year, depending on what state you've been in. And I'm in Ontario in Canada right now, where I can't buy underwear. So I mean, there's a varied range of what is good and what isn't good going on right now. But I think just based on what I've seen here, like I told a story off the air, how I got my hair cut. People, I think, are these rules we've instilled upon ourselves in regards to lockdowns, they've been breaking down for a long time. People have started just become tired. People are taking matters into their own hands. Whether the physical risk or not are ideal, I think is almost an irrelevant part of this in one sense, because I think for the most part, a lot of us are ready to go out. Now, again, this isn't the right answer for everybody. And I think I want to make this very clear. I think everybody has to kind of make their own decision on when to go out. But I think we're at that point where everybody should be making their own decisions at this point. And that's kind of just my basic stance, because psychologically speaking, I think just this forced lockdown, essential work, or this whole thing we've lived in the last year, I don't think it's sustainable. And I think we've kind of come to a breaking point with it. And this is just based on what I've seen up here, where we are still in a lockdown scenario, a lot harder lockdown scenario. People are breaking the rules left, right, and center here anyway, which kind of tells you it's breaking down one way or the other. I just think people are just ready to go forward and just do their thing. And so that's how I see it.
Interesting. How about for everybody else? Yeah, go ahead, Ryan.
So I'll start by saying I'll be at the 20 Books convention in Las Vegas this fall in November. So if that kind of gives you an idea, kind of personally where my head is at. But when I think about this, obviously I'm going to channel it through, my upcoming experience. I'm a firm believer that when you want to find answers and why there's a big worry and a lot of talk that maybe in-person conventions may never return to the way that they were, at least not to the same extent, is follow the money, right? It is, we know the cost of a lot of these events, these conventions. You have to have thousands of people travel. You have thousands of people occupying space that's expensive. Now, there's a true value. I'm not diminishing that. But I believe that we may never return to the same. There will, of course, be certain conventions that will maintain their popularity. But I think as a whole, especially on the corporate end, you're going to find that remote is going to take over. We're already, we all use it for so many different aspects of business as it is. So, I don't personally have a lot of hope for the convention industry as far as that goes.
So 20 Books to 50K is a writers' conference for the most part. I mean, they do have vendor tables and things like that. But so you're looking for more of the interaction with the authors, which, Josh and I have a conference that we've attended regularly. At least I have for a couple of years. Josh probably a little bit longer than me in that respect. But we're doing that one online because Canada is kind of screwed up, as Josh alluded to already. But is that do you feel a lot more adequate with the idea of a conference versus book fest, doing like a vendor kind of thing? Is that kind of how you felt a little bit with choosing to go to 20K or 20 Books to 50K, or was it just that was the first thing that you thought of going to?
Well, I got shut out of it last year because it got canceled. So, and that would have been my first attendance there. It's been a group I've been a part of for several years, but I've never made it out to the conference. So, I think that's what makes the article that you referenced so interesting is the morality behind it, right? Mm-hmm. So, whereas, I feel like I've taken a lot of steps and follow whatever rules are laid out for us in public, right? That's the responsible thing. We want to protect one another. So I think it's a lot of it goes back to comfort level, right? Everybody has a different take on the vaccine. We know some of the science. We're learning more every day, right? So what we knew last week might not necessarily be what we know now. And that makes it complicated. It just, there's so many moving parts to this that I think it does come down to, in my opinion, and I know up in Canada, you guys are in a different position, but, I think we're to the point now where we did sacrifice so much and we need to allow people to make their own decisions. And that's, I think maybe that's going to be the crux of, it's going to be just personal decisions.
Yeah.
I wish Canada was there. I really, really do. I do. we'll touch conventions, I think, in terms of business later, but I just want to just add something real quick. It's just, I think actually, I will just mention this now. I think honestly, even before the pandemic, the conventions model, business model as we knew it, was there had some huge flaws in it. And in a situation like when you look at the fact that a lot of the small and community press were the ones essentially paying for the con with their table spaces, hotel stays, things like that. And the reality of the situation is, especially and for the immediate future for sure, it like a con like Emerald City, I think, will be back in some form or fashion, because Emerald City is an awesome convention and has a huge following. San Diego's another one. That one's the other end of the extreme. That's the purely corporate end of the conventions. But I do think that the convention model that has existed as a business practice for the last 10 years is definitely going to be rethought about in a lot of different ways. Do I think remote's going to be part of it? Yes. Do I think there's still going to be a live aspect to it? Absolutely. I don't know about you, I'm kind of sick of Zoom. I'm just speaking from my own experience here. I'm kind of sick of it. I think a lot of people are. I think, especially in the next 2 years, people are going to be looking to go out. But on the same token, like, there's a model of business that conventions have been doing for a very long time that also has been slowly but surely eroding. And this is an opportunity to kind of redo things from the ground up. And I hope they take it, because if they don't, I don't think a lot of these conventions will be around in 5 years.
Yeah. I don't know if you know the answer to this question, Josh, or not, because you haven't been organizing a con or anything like that. But is force majeure something that happens in Canada as well? Do you know what force majeure is?
You mean the concept of everybody just batting down and buckling the back?
No, force majeure is the insurance part of the convention. So in terms of conventions have to pay this insurance, force majeure, to basically hold the space that they're conducting their business in, and it doesn't get them out of the con is kind of the idea. So.
I don't have an answer to that question. I wish I did. I don't know. My gut tells me not here. My gut tells me that. However, I'm going to say this. This is just a gut reaction. This isn't necessarily the truth. If somebody in the comment section from Canada knows the answer to this question, honestly, go with them. Don't go with me on this one.
Well, somebody who wanted to, Anita wanted to make sure that everybody's aware that not all of Canada is in craziness right now. So
no, I actually know, like the Maritimes are actually okay. But the thing is, I've had this conversation with a couple people. Maritimes did have one small advantage. They're small.
They're isolated too.
They're kind of isolated too.
Yeah.
Ontario is huge. It's like 3 Texases, just to give it an idea of how big Ontario is. So what works for them will not work for us, just because we are too big. And almost all the other provinces, if you go like Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta, British Columbia, and Quebec, all 6 of those provinces are countries unto themselves.
Yeah,
you can't.
Quebec hopes to do that someday. Every year they try to vote.
I kind of feel they're like the girlfriend with leverage.
There are Texas. They're Canada's Texas, right? They're not. How many times have we heard here in the United States that Texas wants to secede from the Union? I mean, it's like constant, right? It's the constant threat that they throw around. So Quebec does the same because they think they're special. But that's another debate for another time, right? So, anyway, how about for Sarah or Courtney? Where were you guys at on everything?
Well, okay. I for one, it's an interesting dilemma for me because both of my parents are retired, and so, a lot of my, hey, I'm not going out during the lockdown because even if I'm not terribly vulnerable, my parents are old people. And then they vacated in Florida during the pandemic and took an airplane. And I'm like, Okay, fine. But they're grown-ups, that's their choice. Well, the new variants coming out seem to be affecting kids more, and I have kids. So now I'm sitting here going, if I go out, am I gonna destroy my children? Because that would be bad. So, I mean, there's still a lot of hesitation on my part, and I'm saying this as my washing machine goes off, as a fully vaxxed human being. Woohoo! Double jab. Um, there's just so much to consider, and like we've been saying, there's so many there's so much information, and that information keeps growing, and therefore the recommendations keep changing. So I think that it's almost an exercise in empty rhetoric to talk about whether or not I'm going to go to a convention in the fall, because it's like I don't know what's going to be going. Like, there could be a huge wave of a new variant that specifically targets sassy teenagers, and then I'd be like, well, dang it, there go my kids, I can't go anywhere now. So it's we don't know. I also agree with the idea that conventions and conferences are going to change radically, and I have very specific thoughts on how that is going to work. I think we're going to end up with a kind of break apart between the class aspect and the networking aspect, classes and networking, and the socializing and the vending. So you're going to have events that are specifically about getting to know people, getting to walk around and look at things, getting to experience those little pockets of the vending, which is going to be more like sci-fi conventions and such. But there has already been so much that is online. One of the conferences that I've been a part of for several years does virtual queries. So they contact larger publishing companies and get people to do queries via Skype. And they've done that for years. And I'm sitting here going, okay, that means the queries aren't stopping. You still get that kind of pseudo face-to-face interaction, but they can't see me rubbing my sweaty palms on my legs. So, yeah, you're going to see a lot more of that. You're going to see a lot more of groups of people putting together classes that are offered as a package online. You're gonna see a lot more of that, because I think that people have learned a little bit of how flexible that can be for their own lives. If you don't actually have the time to make it to the actual session, you can get the recording, kind of thing. So I think we're going to see a lot more of that happening going forward. And then you're also going to have the live in-person events that have the special things, like actually meeting the big names and things like that. Because you can't replace that.
I have two thoughts on what you just said, and I agree with you on a lot of that. Dragon Con has been doing a virtual aspect to their con since they started. They were well ahead of the game. They broadcast it live during the event when it's live, but they've always had a virtual component. They've always had a panel or two where they've always placed it onto the virtual stage on its own. And they also they have what's called Dragon TV, and it's basically them doing interviews with all the celebrities that they've invited to, and all that. And that plays during the conference, but that is all virtual. That is not something that they do live. So it's very So they've always, like you said, the one con that you were talking about had that virtual component as well. So Dragon Con's right there with it, which is very, very interesting for a giant conference like that. And that is a giant conference. Trust me, I've been there. It is a giant conference, and it's actually just Mardi Gras for cosplayers is really what it is. But it is amazing, and I know it's coming back this year in a somewhat subdued, setting, but not really. I think once it starts, I don't think they can stop it. That's the thing about Dragon Con. But I do think that they will try and do some kind of self-control with that aspect of it, but they will have that virtual component again this year. And I think they really showed what you can do with that last year in terms of how you can make that work. And I think also, I forget my second point, so never mind. But anyway, it'll come back to me. But Courtney, did you want to chime in here real quick?
Yeah, I agree a lot that it's a personal choice, and it also is a geographic choice, according on how many cases are in your area, how much that might determine if you're going to go out or not. Your health situation. I've got an autoimmune disorder, so and my kids, I've got small kids that can't get vaccinated yet. So I'm most likely going to be looking towards next year. I've got a con scheduled for May of next year in Washington, D.C. But that's as close as I have come to, getting back into the circuit. I've been doing some virtual stuff. The same con that I'm going to be doing in next May is Imaginarium Book Festival. And I was supposed to go back in 2020, and of course it got canceled. And so then we thought, well, maybe we'll get to do it the next year. And then we just decided to go to a virtual event. And the virtual event was actually really successful. And I do think that we're going to have a lot of more hybrid sort of cons going on, where we've got more virtual things going on. And it makes it easier for people who may not have the funds to go to the con, or that can't travel very far because of health reasons and things. So I think there's definitely good things to doing some more virtual stuff for the cons and making it more accessible to more people. But I'm not really... I'm good getting out there a little bit, like going to the park with my kids and stuff, but we're not really getting back into anything until I can get them both vaccinated and somehow convince my husband to get vaccinated. I got my 2 shots a little while back, so I'm just enjoying being able to be like, hey, look, I can go into the store without a mask, and them having to have theirs on. Not really my kids, but my husband mostly. I'm going, I can go in here with them out of mask, can you? And trying to get him, into getting that jab, and so we can feel a little bit safer as a family, I guess. But yeah, I'm mostly looking at cons for next year. I'm probably not really going to do anything in the fall unless it's virtual.
See, and you sparked what I was thinking about for my second point, which was the idea is that I can't go to San Diego because it's too expensive, or this idea, or I live in Tennessee, and there's this great con in Seattle. I mean, I'm not going to spend $700-800 to go to Seattle, no matter how great the con is. Maybe I will. Maybe I save and I do that. But the thing that cons are realizing, and other than San Diego, I'm going to throw San Diego under the bus a lot today, because San Diego is just no, they're not doing anything that is. They've really tried to shun this whole idea of virtuality. They just think that the virtual thing was just a fad, that it's going to go away, that they're not going to, they're not embracing it at all. They didn't really do a very good job of embracing it last year, and it's evident that they have a little bit of an error to them, because they think that we're going to hold a conference on Thanksgiving weekend, and a lot of people are going to show up. Good luck with that. I hope that works out for you, but I'm not sure. But real quick, Josh, I'll let you jump in here in a second. But I just want to say that most cons are realizing that there's a virtual component to reaching a global audience with that. And in doing that, they're getting much more exposure than they ever had. And these smaller cons are getting a lot more play, and these smaller festivals are starting to show up in a lot more people's lexicons and ideas because they've been using the virtual to that effect. Go ahead, Josh. Sorry.
Okay, no, I do think San Diego is going to be right for the next 2 years. And I'm going to tell you why I think they're going to be right for the next 2 years. I did an interview for this magazine I'm working on about a retirement home getting traction. They had double what they expected to show up at the event. And one of the reasons we talked about this, now, place was a great place. It's a great place to rent and retire, to have adventures with, all that stuff. But there's something I think for the next, when things look, I'm just saying, like, there's a desperation for people to go out, have contact, and meet people, and there's going to be a honeymoon phase, I think, initially with this idea. I think 2022 is going to be, for events, it's going to be probably really, really big. Mm-hmm. It's the long game. It's the long game where I think San Diego is also the biggest convention. They are the ones. If they have to make a change, they're gonna have to pivot, and it's going to be like a very small whirling gear. Like, it's just going to take them a while to get there. That's why they're so heavily against changing anything. But I do think they're right for the next 2 years. I think they're going to have a very large turnout for Thanksgiving. I think they're going to have a large turnout next year as well. I think 2023 is going to be the year where they're going to have a good, long, hard look in the mirror, because all these other cons that have done all these other things on top of what they've already done, they're going to be the ones with a more sustainable model going forward, right? Whereas San Diego is going to be like, well, we're the one where all the big movie premiere and that big guy stars show up, and that will draw somewhat. But again, as a guy like me, I may not want to go to San Diego for the convention.
Yeah.
I want to go to San Diego for other reasons, but not necessarily for the convention, right? But I do think, like, for the next, when, like, I'm just based on what I'm seeing so far, everybody's ready to go outside. And I think for the next year and a half, there is going to be a boom. I think a lot of people are going to try putting a lot of events on with that because that contact, that getting together, that interaction, that experience thing again, that whole concept of experience is going to be a very big draw. That's just my opinion for the next year and a half. Now, when we get to 2023, I think 2023 though is where I think your point's going to really start to rear its head, because when the honeymoon is over, it's like, do I really want to go to San Diego this year?
Yeah.
Right. That's kind of the thing I see there.
I think that's fair, and I think 2022 is going to be a good barometer for that, because I think no matter what happens, whether it's successful or not in Thanksgiving, that's a wash, because they're not going to keep it at Thanksgiving. They're going to go back to their regular schedule in June and do 2022 in June. And I think that's a good barometer of what you're talking about. But the thing that, and I you would think there's some very, very smart people behind this. They've turned this thing into a global, massive thing. It's Disneyland basically for a weekend, and people from all over the world want to go and attend. So there is that aspect to it, but. And I would assume that they probably lined up some pretty big names and pretty big guests for that before announcing that they were going to do it on Thanksgiving weekend. Hopefully, we thought that last year, and it kind of fizzled out a little bit. People were having trouble with their internet, and all kinds of weird things happened during that time. And a lot of that was out of their control too. And to be fair, but because we've all experienced that, every single one of us who've done a show live know what that's like. When something like that doesn't go right, and it happens. But the other aspect of it that is interesting is that this is during the push of award season, right? So November is usually the time when studios start to, for your consideration, press awards and things like that. So if they utilize that aspect of it, I think they're going to have a lot of really, really rich celebrities that they've never had there before probably show up, because they're trying to win an Academy Award. But at the same token, it also could be because they're doing all kinds of other things for that aspect of that business. I worry that there's a little bit of flair there. But obviously, Marvel movies and things like that don't usually have that problem or issue. But there's a lot going on between November and January in Hollywood, and that's where I go. San Diego might be teetering a little bit on testing the waters a little bit more than they should. But hey, I think you're probably right. There's probably a lot of people, especially within the continental United States, that want to get there. Who doesn't want to be in San Diego in fucking November? I mean, if you're in Madison, Wisconsin, where there's 7 feet of snow, in November, and you look at the San Diego beach line and go, hey, I can get my favorite bobblehead, or I can get my favorite, a toy, or I can get my shield signed and be on the beach. That might be a consideration for Thanksgiving, right? So,
Just remember, two companies have a reputation of going one or two directions when it comes to change. I think Ryan, all right. Just remember, companies have a tendency to go one or two directions when big changes are afoot. They either pivot and go with those changes, or they don't like change. Yeah, exactly, Regine. Heck yeah, I'm in too. I'm planning on doing a show in Texas in October. We'll see what happens if I get that. I won't there, but we'll see. Because hell yeah, jeans and shorts. I'm in, man. I'm just totally in. But the thing about that is, companies go two ways. If they're big companies, some of them are smart enough and start pivoting slowly, and some of them resist all the way because they are the big fish in the pond. I think the thing is, I think we all will agree on this 100%, even though we're not sure exactly what the shape of it's going to be going forward. Conventions and conferences are going to change forever as a result of what happened here, regardless. Now, but if you're the biggest fish and you've made the most keeping it the way it was, you're probably going to dig your heels in as hard as you can, because that's what I think San Diego is. That's like, hey, we're the biggest fish in the world. We need, like, they're not going to think long term. And I think, like I said, if I were a betting man, the next 2 years they win. 2023, I think, is where you're going to see the real measuring stick of where these changes we're talking about now come in, because I think everybody's going to want to go out and experience things again, and I think that's going to be the big draw of 2022. It's when we're like, okay, we're partied out, we are out of money. Shit. Now that's where we're gonna be.
And I still want to I still want to go to some cons. So hey, if there's some online, I might do that on 2023 because I'm broke and I'm sitting in my underwear in my living room. So why not be on Zoom?
There is an aspect that I agree with Josh to a certain degree, but I don't go to movie star conventions.
I agree.
That's way out of my wheelhouse. But one of the things that the people that I run in circles with have done is during this pandemic, we've migrated online, of course. But the interesting effect of that is now about half of the independent authors that we know are European or Australian, or we even have a bunch of people from Asia. And, we're sitting here going, we've got literally every time zone covered here. And so I'm actually helping build up a virtual conference for next month that is going to be 3 days, 24 hours a day, live streaming. And that is only something that you can do and offer because you have international connections who aren't necessarily like, oh yeah, of course, let's all, fly to a central location because, rolling in the dough right now. We're not. But to be able to offer that, to be able to, because we're in a fairly unique time in history. Obviously, it's going to get better as we move forward, but we have so many options for platforms for getting these kinds of things out to the entire world and being able to account for, Myanmar. I don't even know where Myanmar is, but we can account for that time zone. We can provide content for people in the UK that is just as prioritized as people in North America, because obviously North America ends up being the central time zones, because that's where so many English speaking authors live and work. But it's not the only ones. We are able to reach out and say, hey, this is how you get books translated when you're an indie author, because French speaking dude over here needs his book edited in English. He speaks English, but he doesn't edit in English, and he needs an editor in English, and you need your book translated into French. So guess what you're doing? So there's a lot of contacts that have been made because of this whole pandemic situation. And I think that is something that you're going to see with smaller conventions moving forward, is this move to virtual simply because of the international connections.
Mm-hmm. Yes, right.
I came first off, Sarah, I'm going to throw you some thumbs up, because I think you seem to have a good perspective on that. And I agree with all of you guys that this industry, even if the first couple of years due to the stir craziness, because I can see that happening too, to be honest with you. That's part of the reason why I'm going to 20 books, right? Is I want to get that experience. So I completely get that. I came across a really interesting article out of the Boston University magazine, where they interviewed one of the adjunct professors there. And she also happens to be like a really prominent event planner in the Boston area. She owns an event planning company. And what I find fascinating about that, the article was written a couple months ago. And what she talked about is maybe a little bit about convention, but really any way that we communicate on these big scales. When you talk about even some of the smaller conventions, when you go online, you're going to be talking about thousands of people. And it almost is like, not only do the companies have to pivot from a mindset perspective, but basically you're producing a live television show, essentially, when you're hosting these massive conventions. So, I just wonder if that's where we're going to first see the shift, because what the event planner is saying is that she's already seen her industry shift from event planning in person to doing actual virtual event hosting, where a contracted company is essentially hosting the conference like a director would for a live TV show.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there is a shift, and then this is Nita's question, and we've already been answering it. But what are the feelings about virtual becoming part of the live content as things open up? Do you think it's a good thing or a bad thing? And I think it's always a good thing. I think anything that's innovative is a good thing, and I think it could turn bad. I mean, if you stick your guns one way or the other, I think what Josh was saying earlier about San Diego sticking to their guns, and then it's going to come back at them at some point. I think also with virtual conning, there is a threshold as well, that you get to a point where you're doing the same thing over and over again every year. People are going to kind of wane and kind of go, well, I was here last year. Give me something new. Give me something inventive. Do something different. I was part of a con that we did what Sarah was talking about, 24/7 for an entire weekend for three years running. We did the same thing, and it was the same thing. And people were burned out. People were having trouble keeping up with it because it wasn't changing. It wasn't evolving. It wasn't going with. There was talk at the end of the second one about going live and being in person, because that's what the next evolution was at that point. And so, and then there's so much behind. People don't realize how much it is to put these things on. These events are very difficult to put on, and organize and get together and do all that things as well. So, I mean, So there is the good and bad on both ends. I think you have to be able to evolve and and make it fresh and new, right?
Well, in a lot of ways, going virtual, at least to some degree, is going to help with that because,
Yeah.
I've worked with a lot of small conferences, and one of the biggest things that we run into is we have virtually no budget. How are we going to get a big name to show up to our conference? Well, if you ask somebody to, take an hour out of their day to Skype or Zoom or whatever platform you use, and you can do a Q&A, a live Q&A with a big name over the internet, you can get that for much cheaper than, hey, can you fly out for 3 days? And then you have to pay all their expenses and their flight. It's a massive difference in the amount of cost to the planners at that point. And so you can have more options for getting big names to actually show up to your conference. So, show up. But that's the thing. It's a thing, Yeah, you're not going to be able to touch Samuel L. Jackson, but you get to hear him say that famous word.
I think that's more appealing to Samuel L. Jackson as well, right? I think that's probably more appealing. Hey, I don't have to worry about touching me.
I know it's definitely more appealing to Howie Mandel.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, speaking of big names, each week we have a little segment where we have a certain person. She's cool. She's around. But we have a certain person that always takes a big name for us and gives us some indies to check out. Anything you want to tell everybody about this episode coming up here, Courtney? Or
it's a little bit out of this world, and it's by Mr. James Patterson, who has his hand in every genre out there. So I think this one's a really cool addition to our indie connection, and it is YA sci-fi. So I hope you guys enjoy it.
With that being said, here you go. Here's your indie connection for this week.
Hey guys, C.L. Cannon here from Fiction Atlas Press doing another Indie Connection. Today I'm going to be telling you about some indie books that you might enjoy if you're a fan of the Daniel X series by James Patterson. The first book I have for you is called The Awakening by Crystal Storm. Vasco, Simone, and Lucian Terrazino are triplets, born into the privilege of a generationally wealthy Italian family. They think their lives will be simple: a large inheritance, the family business, and the power that comes with it. Wrong. On his deathbed, their grandfather commands them to visit the vault, a place where all the Terrazino family secrets are kept, along with 3 strange devices that will unlock memories the triplets didn't know they had. A war was started, born from pure ego, pitting the Terrazino family against a secret cabal and their alien masters that controlled planet Earth. Arrogance and money aren't enough to win this. Time isn't on their side, and Vasco, Simone, and Lucian must find their strength and information to finish what their family started, free the planet from the chains that have kept it imprisoned, and give humanity the chance to finally start making its own choices. The second book I have for you is called Undisclosed by Jon Mills. Legends, myths, and religions called them by many names. One group was our protector, the other an enemy. Both knew the secret of human origins. Both had different agendas. Both remain undisclosed until now. Living in Los Alamos, New Mexico, a small town already shrouded in secrecy, disappearances, and the unusual, Travis Marshall's life spirals out of control after a sudden and horrendous tragedy. 1 year later, when tragedy strikes again, and this time his father, a molecular biologist at the illustrious Los Alamos laboratories, mysteriously vanishes and his own life is put in jeopardy, Travis discovers more than the truth behind his disappearance. In a race against time, and aided by an unusual band of outsiders, he finds himself thrust into a dangerous game of cat and mouse in which the outcome could change everything. Beneath a blanket of ancient lies, global cover-ups, and genetic tampering, he's about to uncover not only the origins of mankind, but also come face to face with those who threaten the fate of the human race. The answers to the greatest questions of all time have never been as terrifying, exciting, or troubling. The third book I have for you is called Crystalline Space by A.K. DeBoff. Do-overs are possible. Elle was just a normal teenager enjoying her summer vacation when everything changes. After an emergency planet-wide reset on her homeworld, she instead awakens on a spaceship and is told that the fate of known civilization is in her hands. A mysterious darkness has infected the crystalline network connecting the settled worlds. The unique properties of the crystals allow reality to be reset to past moments in time, granting second chances. However, the darkness isn't only threatening the reset process, it's consuming entire planets. Paired with a diverse team of magically enhanced companions, Elle embarks on an interstellar quest to protect the hegemony by stealing the Master Archive, the backup for the crystalline network. With only vague clues to guide them, Elle and her new friends must track down ancient relics and unravel hidden secrets before their worlds and loved ones are lost in shadow forever. And the last book I have for you is called The Ides by A.N. Meier. When 16-year-old Jordan Tripp witnesses a dramatic flash in the sky, a phenomenon unnoticed by everyone else in a crowded school playground, is just the first of a bizarre series of incidents that threaten not just Jordan, but the entire world. What is the strange influence that causes his teachers to forget their subjects, his friends to turn against him, and strangers to attack him for no reason? What is happening to the police, who are painting leaves on their faces and calling themselves gardeners? And what are the invisible creatures that stalk the streets of London at night, leaving piles of bones behind them? As a sinister force tightens its grip on an increasingly insane and servile population, Jordan manages to contact others who are immune to the influences. The Ides. Retreating to an isolated farmhouse, the motley crew struggle to survive the brutal crisis of the Fugue, an event that threatens to transform the Earth and enslave humankind forever.
Okay, that's all for me this week. I'll see you next week on The Indie Connection. Bye!
All right. Thank you to our good friend, Miss C.L. Cannon. Always awesome to have you do that for us each and every week, and for us to exclusively show it here. I really appreciate that, as always. That was a great run. You always find the most awesome covers. I mean, it's just amazing the things that you discover. Those covers were fantastic. I was blown away by a lot of them. So not much going on in the chat this morning. I think everybody's a little bit enjoying the 3-day weekend, so especially in America. That being said, anybody want to talk a little bit more about conventions? What are your let's put this out there. What do you feel like is your most intrepidatious or cautious element to attending an event? Where do you feel like you're going to be most concentrated on making sure of before attending an event?
I'm the wrong guy to answer this question. I have like zero fear. That's just how I'm just wired
that's
that
fine.
way.
Hey, that's fine too.
Yeah. Because for me, I'll explain why. Like for me, this is how I kind of see it. Even though, yes, this is new, this is still scary. We don't have perfect answers. In fact, I'd argue probably this whole last year and a half has been a practice of an absence of good solutions. That's how I would describe the last year. But in terms of like fragility of life, going out and taking risk and doing all those things, nothing's changed really that way. No matter what, going into the future, COVID is as the big threat is going to recede as time goes on, and new things will keep coming up. Life is fragile. These risks we're thinking about with COVID now have always been there with all kinds of other things as well. We're just in this very, very unique moment, aware of just how fragile life is. I dealt with my own personal apocalypse 10 years ago, so I don't like, and from just a personal health standpoint, I don't get sick very often. often. When I get sick, it's either weird or it's like once every like 5 years I get a cold, and like once in 20 I get the flu. I don't get sick. So I'm fortunate that way. So for me, it's just, but I'm also like, when I have had these moments where I faced my mortality, I have had where my body hasn't been fully controlled, when I have been, like, I get weird shit when I'm sick. You just come to recognize that life has always been fragile. And at some point you have to go forward. And that's kind of where I'm at. Now, again, everybody's different. There are people here with autoimmune disorders, people with elderly parents they're concerned with, and all of that's valid. But like for me personally, because I've also been a quote unquote essential worker, I go out and take a risk every day. I've made peace with this risk pretty much since the beginning of the pandemic. And that's what everybody has to come to terms with, is what risk is acceptable for you. And whatever that is, there's no wrong answer here. Like I said, for everybody that knows me, I'm just crazy. And that's just the way it is. So,
and that's why we love you, brother.
Yeah.
How about for everybody else? Is there anything that anybody's really thinking about, or is you all along the same lines?
Yeah, the only thing I'll say about it is what makes this whole situation tricky, right? Is that we can protect ourselves the best we can, but we're also in charge of protecting other people, right? Because it's something that easily spreads. So, I think that, I'm a firm believer that, we don't have all the answers, but it's all on us, right? We have to trust other people. We have to trust the people that are around us, and we have to make the right moral choice ourselves. And we just need to take care of each other. And I think if we do that, it's not going to disappear. We know that. It'll be around. It takes time. But if we respect one another, and we're all managing our own risk factors, I think that that's how we move forward.
Yes.
I think that there is a lot to be said for, there's a lot of people who have been really pushing the concept of virtual therapy and taking care of oneself during this time. Because I think that there are a lot of people who have underlying issues that have really come out because of of the stress, of the isolation, of the unique situation that we've been put into. It's really caused a lot of things that we could just kind of ride over to really pop out. And I think that there is I've seen it for years, but I think this last year especially, there's been a very key shift in people realizing that therapy isn't for losers, because it's not, and I will fight anybody on that. And that, sometimes it's not even that you are even suffering from something serious. Sometimes you just need to get crap off of your chest.
Yeah.
And, the idea that we can check in with people, that we can, do a couple of weeks of therapy for, $10 a pop online. Those kinds of things are really getting more attention. And I think that, allow me to add my voice to that. I honestly think that therapy should be kind of like seeing your general practitioner. Every couple of years, you should just, pop in and get checked, just check in. That I think that would be so much better for people. But, my personal opinion.
Yeah. Awesome. Courtney, how about for you?
I'm still going with, I have to watch out for my kids. And so, I would probably wait till cases were down. And right now we're kind of coming down in our area. And I'm starting to get my kids out a little bit more. They're not just in the cave of my house, trying to find things to do anymore. We're actually going out and doing a few things. So I think it's just going to be a gradual return to normal as things I feel like things are getting safer for us, and making sure everyone's washing their hands really good, and following all of the guidelines that are out there.
Nice. Well, I have to say, another great panel. It's just what it is. I mean, you guys were fantastic. Let's go down the line and just tell everybody where they can find you. We'll start from where we ended the last time. So, Courtney, tell everybody where they can check you out.
You can find me at clcanon.net or fiction-atlas.com. I am all over every single social media except for Snapchat, because I'll never be able to get on there and figure it out. But I'm on TikTok, I'm on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. Everything's under CL Canon Author, except for Instagram, which is CL_Canon. And just hit me up on there. I've got a bunch of bookish posts. I collect a lot of books, and I try to write it off as getting books for the Indie Connection, but really I'm getting a lot of books for me just to throw up on my shelves. And so just check me out on there. I do a lot of things for authors, do a lot of things on this show, and I'm just a really weird, nerdy person, so go look me up.
It's kind of cool to be the sausage factory sometimes, because then you get to pull the sausage fresh from it, and I love that aspect of the Indie Connection as well, because I'm selfishly I get the video usually a day before, so I'm always looking at those books before everybody else has seen them. So yes, I totally understand what you're talking about there. All right, Sarah, where can everybody check you out? And tell everybody about the event coming up too.
Oh, yes. Okay, so Sarah Buhrman, Author Goddess, authorgoddess.com, Twitter, Twitch, Facebook, pretty much all the social medias. Send me a message, I will respond. I'm weird that way. And you can check out my books on Amazon and a whole bunch of other places. My website is really the central location, though, so probably start there. The convention that I'm putting together is called the Writer's Conduit. It is hosted on Twitch. We will be doing at least 4 different streams simultaneously for 3 24-hour periods straight. And I believe it's the 23rd, 24th?
25th through the 27th.
Yes, the 25th through the 27th. Yes, so the Friday, Saturday, Sunday there. We have panels on all kinds of things. We have a few workshops going on. We're going to have blue pencil sessions and critique groups and writing sprint sessions. We're going to have some sprint lobbies going on. There's going to be at least 4 things to do every single minute of the 24 hours. Do not sleep. I'm not going to. So, and the writersconduit.com is the website for that, so you can check that out. We are finalizing the schedule as we speak, and then we will be doing signups. So, woohoo! If you want something to do that weekend.
Yes, and the only reason I know the dates is because I asked off of work yesterday for that weekend. So I know the exact date for that reason. Anyway, Ryan, tell everybody where they can find you, brother.
Yeah, absolutely. RyanDMeier.com, Facebook, Twitter, Ryan D. Meier. Search me up. You'll find me there. My books, The Kept King and Shadows of Creation, you could find right on Amazon and in Kindle Unlimited. And I'll give a quick little boost. I'm also the founder of World Hoppers Guild. So if you're a fantasy or a sci-fi author, we help just get your stories into more hands. It's free to everybody and readers. Join our newsletter. Every month, you're going to have access to free indie books and interviews and a whole bunch of fun stuff. So worldhoppersguild.com.
Awesome. I will put that link into the description for everybody, so you can check that out. All right, Josh.
Well, I'm also going to be part of Writers Conduit. I'm going to be one of the people streaming on it. I actually just remember I have an email I owe somebody over there, so I have to do that when this is over. June 15th, there'll be an announcement for my next book. I just mentioned the title. It's Alice 1. It's going to be my sequel to Alice in Wonderland. Something else is happening with Alice 0 that day, and then when that seems like a good time, so that's going to be my next book release. I'm on Twitch regularly, twitch.tv/justjoshingpodcast. This week coming up, I'm interviewing Mark Watson, Tasia Moore, and Jennifer Lieberman. And hold on a second here, just because I missed somebody. Lisa Macon Wood is actually going to be my guest next week as well. Follow and subscribe. Like I said, check out my books where you can check them out. If you want to listen to me as an audio, my podcast is available pretty much everywhere. And for everybody out there, thanks for watching, thanks for listening, and stay inspired.
Nice, awesome. And I am Joe Compton. You are at Go Indie Now. If you don't know where you are, that's where you are. Congratulations, you found us. And please, subscribe, like, comment, all those wonderful things you like. And I will say smash that like button because why not? But that being said, for all of you who have stuck around, congratulations. You're about to get a very special treat. Tomorrow, I wanted to mention at 1 p.m. Eastern, for Memorial Day, we have a very, very special interview I did. Not so much, it's, we're all about artists here and things of that nature, but this gentleman inspired some artists. And so I wanted to sit down with him and have a conversation, and that I did. And it's a fantastic one. As a fellow Marine, I was very, very nervous to have this conversation because he's very, very much somebody I really admire and look up to. And so it was a really great conversation between two Marines, and there's a little bit of Marine stuff going on there, but for the most part, it is a very, very fascinating conversation. And here is a very, very small sneak preview of that conversation that, again, will air live tomorrow. I will be streaming it live at 1 p.m. Eastern. That's noon Central, 11 Mountain, 10 Pacific. So come and join us. I will be in the chat. And you never know, maybe John will show up in the chat as well. And that's the gentleman that I'm talking to, Mr. John Hancock, who was the subject of a documentary called Bastards Road. And this is just a little taste. I'm just curious, what was your initial intention, your mission statement to start doing this journey? I know you were well on the way to the journey before Brian. You met Brian and you guys talked about recording. So was your intention going to be to record yourself at that point? Were you just not even going to concern yourself with that and just go? Or where were you at in that respect?
So, I mean, it really came, the impetus for it really came from rock bottom, right? And, the suicide attempt after 2 DUIs was really the changing factor for me. I'm sitting in a Baltimore VA hospital. I'm in the psych ward, and I see this man named Mike Vitti who walked across the country, and he was wrapping that up at the Army-Navy game, which is usually held between Baltimore and Philly. And that year just so happened it was in Baltimore at M&T Bank Stadium. And he was shoring up that journey. And so there's a lot of news and coverage about him. And I was just sitting in the psych ward watching the news one morning, and they talked about him. And I was like, man, that's it. I have to go meet my brothers. I've got to go walk across this country.
So there you go, everybody. That's a little taste of what you could expect tomorrow. It's about 40-minute conversation that I had. I am doing as little editing as possible in it. There's a couple things that I'm gonna tailor, but for the most part, it is as much of a conversation as I've ever shown on any show at any time. So come and join me for that. Would really love to see it because it's always time to go indie now. And with that being said, we'll say goodbye, good luck, and have a wonderful rest of your week. And check everybody out that's here and has been talked about. Go get that DeFranco album too, and go check out JD's latest release as well.
Also, or get anything from him because he's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, guys, take care. We'll see you then.